Welcome to Finance Deep Dive. Today, we're unpacking a massive shift in the labor market and what it all means for your money. We're going way beyond the headlines about picket lines to really understand a fundamental change in how workers are fighting for their share. All right, let's just kick things off with a number that is, well, it's pretty staggering. $61 million. That's what Air Canada was estimated to be losing every single day during its recent flight attendant strike. I mean, a dispute so disruptive, it literally grounded an entire airline. And you know what? It's a perfect window into a much, much bigger story. So what on earth caused a $61 million a day shutdown? This wasn't just about getting a salary bump. No, this strike was a flashpoint over a deeply emotional issue that I think a lot of us can relate to: the fight against unpaid work. This statement from the flight attendants union, it really gets to the heart of the conflict. For years, and you might not know this, flight attendants weren't paid for their ground time. We're talking boarding, deplaning, all that waiting around between flights. It was this old cost-cutting measure that over time just became a huge symbol of disrespect. So this fight, it wasn't just about the money. It was about the principle that all your work deserves to be paid for. Now, what's really fascinating here is how this strike shows a major change in strategy, especially compared to the big trend we saw dominating the last few years. It really feels like we're turning the page on a new chapter of how employees push for change. So we've all heard about the Great Resignation, right? That was all about individual protest. If you didn't like your job and the market was hot, you just voted with your feet and found something better. Simple. But now, with a lot more economic uncertainty, that's a much riskier move for a lot of people. What we're seeing instead is something we're calling the Great Stand. It's not about individuals leaving anymore. It's about groups digging in their heels, together, and demanding better from right where they are. So to put it simply, the Great Stand is basically the organized evolution of the Great Resignation. The frustrations, they're the same. Burnout, pay that isn't keeping up. But the strategy has totally changed, from individual flight to a collective fight. Workers are realizing that, their power is just so much greater when they act together. And look, this isn't just some catchy phrase we made up. The data tells a really dramatic story about this new era of collective action. And you might be surprised to see where the epicenter of this whole movement is. Just check out these numbers for 2024. In the US, you had about 271,000 workers go on strike. Now look at Canada, a country with about 1/12 the population. It had almost 500,000 workers on strike. That's over 200,000 more people. It just goes to show you how Canada's more heavily unionized workforce has become this global hotspot for the Great Stand. Okay, this brings us to a really interesting question. A bit of a paradox, actually. The latest data is showing that in both the US and Canada, wages are, on average, finally growing faster than inflation. So if people's buying power is technically going up, why is there still so much unrest? The answer is something called the inflation lag effect. Think about it like this. Back in 2022, crazy high inflation completely wiped out any wage growth. In real terms, you were losing money. Now, even though wages are gaining ground today and are expected to keep growing, unions are at the bargaining table now trying to claw back all that value that was lost 2 years ago. They're essentially playing financial catch-up. So let's talk about the impact. Because a strike in one key area can set off a massive chain reaction. When a critical industry grinds to a halt, the shockwaves don't just stay on the picket line. They ripple out and affect the entire economy. Our modern just-in-time economy? It's like a perfectly balanced line of dominoes. It's super efficient, but it's also incredibly fragile. A single strike, say a rail stoppage, is like the finger that tips that first domino. All of a sudden, materials aren't getting to factories, production lines stop, and eventually the shelves at your local store start looking a little bare. And the financial cost of tipping over those dominoes, it's just staggering. A 2-month Boeing strike cost the U.S. economy $5.7 billion. A port strike cost almost $500 million in just 3 days. And that Canadian rail strike, that was estimated to cost the economy $1 billion Canadian dollars per day. These numbers really show you the immense economic leverage that organized labor has right now. Okay, so we've seen the trend, we've looked at the data, we've seen the massive impact, but what does the Great Stand actually mean for your personal bottom line? How do you and I navigate this new, more volatile era? This isn't just some abstract economic theory. It has direct consequences for your financial stability. Supply chain disruptions can mean higher prices and product shortages. And this new era of collective action, it could absolutely reshape the power dynamics in your very own workplace.
So how can you prepare? Well, first, building up your emergency fund is more important than ever. These disruptions can affect anyone, not just the people on strike. Second, it's smart to know your sector's risk. Are you in an industry like manufacturing or transportation where this kind of thing is more common? And third, whether you're in a union or not, just understand that collective advocacy is gaining real influence. The power of a unified voice is becoming a much bigger force.
So we've seen this profound shift, right? The quiet, individual protest of the Great Resignation has given way to the loud, collective fight of the Great Stand. And as this new balance of power keeps evolving, the big question is no longer if workers have power, but how they're going to choose to use it next. And that right there is what will define the future of